It's 25 past on my watch, that's slow. And the suspense is killing me, so... George, would you like to entertain us, please?
All right, yes. I was coming along, just a sit-in sort of thing, but I did see two things that I thought I'd say something about, and that is the two recent planning applications where the council discussed it and then put in their views, which were, in both cases with these, they were objections. But I see once it goes to Sedgemoor, then you seem to be wasting your time, sort of thing, because they've both been passed by Sedgemoor. Now, one was turned down on the fact of a building line, and at one time that was always sacrosanct, you never built in front of the building line, but this time it's been passed, so one assumes that nowadays if you want to, you can build in front of the building line. The other one was backfilling sort of thing. Now, when I came to Brent Knoll, backfilling was definitely out. You never did a backfilling. Not until a previous chairman of the council built a house at the back. So since then, it's an open house. You cannot refuse backbuilding. But anyway, so I was a bit surprised to see that you actually objected to it when nowadays you just don't have a leg to stand on. The precedent was made some time ago. And since then there have been a lot of other ones anyway. So it's not only one. So that was my two moments about that. And the last one, I did take a walk this afternoon down Crooked Lane. I've been known to mention Crooked Lane before, One Badger's Hole. You've had in my diary, 2016, June, it mentions that there's a barrier around it sort of thing. Well, here we are at least 15 months further on, and the barrier is still around it and the hole is still there. So it looks as though
They're looking for a concrete that's compatible with badgers.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention,
So,
George.
just remind us, so where is this exactly in Crooked Lane? Which part?
well, just before the bridge on the left-hand side.
Right.
In fact, they put, you know, the keep left sign and the keep right sign, a barrier. Well, the trouble is, over the years, the greenery has grown so big that you can't tell it's there. But the thing that got me, it was actually marked first of all in either red or orange. Now, I thought red was something they would do straight away. But anyway, 15 months later on, the hole is still there.
Well, that bridge is bad as well, isn't it? But a child could put a hot air head through the hole in the bridge.
It's very good for the youngsters when the steam trains go by, they can see the steam trains.
That's a metal.
Yeah.
It's all rusted out.
It's been there since 1841. Been there since 1841. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, George.
And I will sit and listen to you.
You're always welcome.
That was very useful.
Well, it looks better in the Bridgewater, in the Brent Knoll News when it says so many members plus one. Plus.
Yes. 39 last month.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll make a start. I can't see anybody. Apologies for absence, please, Owen.
From Andrew Hackett and Colin Townsend, both of which are taking their holidays at this time.
Can we agree that that's acceptable? Thank you. Unanimous.
Okay.
Declarations of pecuniary interest or personal beneficial interests?
Can I do a personal interest in anything related to Sedgemoor or Somerset because of my role there, and also a personal in terms of the 6A and a pecuniary in 6B, so on 6B I'll have to leave the room.
6A and 6B.
Yeah, as a trustee of the whole.
My personal interest in the 6A and 6B.
Pecuniary in 6B. think yours might be the same as mine on 6B because we're trustees.
Yes.
And potentially there's a financial element.
So
So
it's
you
got
want
to
That's peculiar, so we're out of the
Peculiar.
way.
So you might have to leave the room as well.
be. Okay.
And there were 7.
Sorry?
And then there were 7.
Yes. Agatha Christie.
Um,
Confirmation of the minutes. We have minutes of our meeting held on the 5th of July 2017.
if you can remember such a time.
Has anybody got any points that they wish to raise that are in error or anything like that? Can I have a proposal that we accept those minutes, please? Thank you. And all in favour? Yes. Good.
Good.
Lots of stuff last time.
Because
A lot of white
Well, they're
letters.
not meeting.
There was a lot of white space.
we were in the planning subject.
Right.
I don't think you're right.
Right, we have no planning applications, but there is an issue under item 4 that we ought to perhaps just consider, please. As George rightly mentioned, last time we had planning for consideration, we did raise some objections, and at the time it was felt that somebody from council should go to the committee meeting and present our reasons for objecting at that meeting. Now, personally, I don't know whether that's a good thing to continue or not. However, what I would favour for the future is, rather than simply saying we object on the grounds of overdevelopment or whatever, but to make a much fuller statement, rather like Colin did when he did the presentation, and send that in, not necessarily having to go to the meeting, because I can't see we benefit to go to these meetings personally, unless anybody has any other views.
Well, I thought it was interesting to go, in the
Right.
sense of seeing it how it all proceed, you know, how the procedural and everything else went on. But I think from our point of view, because obviously the planning committee had a look at these development, these applications, and are actually what we had to say in a way, I wouldn't say pointless, but they didn't really carry any weight at all. And I know that going and showing your face and everything at the council is a good thing to do perhaps, but I think in regards making any impression, I don't think, well, we certainly didn't do that night.
No.
We
But I
were,
would have thought if we
we
said-
were overwhelmed actually, and what we had to say
Yeah.
definitely didn't have enough, you know, there wasn't a really
I think, in general, I think it is worth attending if you have a particular application that you have strong planning grounds to fight. The difficulty that Colin had when he presented at the committee this time, and it was alluded to by George, was one of the applications, which was the bungalow application with an extension at the front.
Yep.
The argument was it was breaking the building line. The building line itself is not a planning issue, so you have to have a reason why it's a problem. So if it had been overpowering the next door house, 2-storey over the bungalow next door, that would be an issue. If you think about other bungalows, I mean, Jean Owens a little while ago had exactly the same sort of conservatory built on the front of her bungalow, so there's precedent in the village, so you can't turn it down. I know precedent is something there will be an argument about whether there's such thing. In terms of planning, you can't justify or turn something down purely on precedent, but it makes your case a lot more difficult to turn something down if it's already happened several times before. Because the argument is, well, if it was okay last time, why isn't it okay this time? So on that one, Colin was on a sticky wicket because really there were very little grounds to really allow the committee to get hold of to come in behind the parish council. On the other one, backfill in itself, again, there's no policy that says you cannot have backland development, but normally backland development comes with other problems. It comes with problems of overlooking between the properties, or the new properties going in behind is having a major impact on the landscape, or its access difficulties. Now again, the parish council put up reasons for those, but as you heard at the discussion, the members of the committee actually said, well, the design of what they'd come up with was very impressive. It was a 1.5-storey building against a 2-storey building at the front, so it certainly wasn't overpowering it, it was stepping down. There was a large garden left on the original property and a garden given to the new property, so the two were well spaced away from each other. There's a stonking great beech tree being retained in between them as well, so overlooking wasn't an issue. And the one issue that could have then been an issue was the access, which we queried as to whether it was, as a parish council, whether it was adequate. It was talked about at the meeting, and it's over 4 metres wide, and during recent works that have been done at the next door neighbour, they've had tankers and lorries and huge great tractors down there clearing land behind, so there was evidence that actually there was room to get vehicles clearly down there. So Colin's difficulty wasn't that he gave a good presentation, he picked up on the issues that the parish council had given him. The problem was none of those issues were able to hold water in terms of that particular application. So I wouldn't want you to think that just because I've always said to you before, just turning up doesn't mean the views will be taken as gospel. You've got to be able to make a case.
Yeah.
The difficulty he had on those two was there wasn't a strong case, and particularly you saw those who attended. The officers give a very comprehensive presentation, both verbally and in terms of talking through the plans on the screen as you have them here now. And really, the members of the committee who were sat around there that day had very little room to come up with a reason why they could object to it. It wasn't bad design. It
No, it's
wasn't
only one person.
But just
yeah.
to reiterate, I accept everything you say. I'm just wondering though whether we, rather than necessarily have to go to the committee, which I know is quite good to show your face, but to make our response more fulsome rather than a simple one-liner. That was all, as a principle going forward.
Your response will be praised. So if you write, and this is one of the things that comes up regularly at the training sessions for parishes, is don't make your reams of response, because to be honest, the officers will pick out of it the bones of what the planning issues are that you're picking up, but they'll praise it for the committee because they can't have reams and reams of all that going in.
Can I ask Bob, you said that Colin made a good representation of the case, and no, he just didn't make the case.
He made a good case of what he had, but the evidence that he had wasn't a strong case to put.
Well, you say he didn't have a strong case. Shouldn't the planning authorities also have a good case? And was their case overwhelming as? Is it superior or?
I mean,
I don't think Bob is not in a position to answer that.
Well, the only answer I would be able to give is that the committee heard both sides of the argument and they came pretty firmly down on one side.
Right.
I mean, I think Bella and Cynthia both heard the presentation that was given by the officers. I don't know whether you felt it was a comprehensive case that they put. I have to leave that with others who were in the room.
Brian has been busting to get here.
Some time ago, about a year ago, you sent round a list of all the planning applications that we'd looked at, showing how many had been accepted by Sept and how many had been refused. And the percentage that were accepted that was quite good. So what I'm saying is we must keep putting our own opinions.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that. But I'm
So
saying
they're not all destroyed.
I just want to make two comments. Which is, we were advised not to use the word precedent, which and we didn't know that, and that almost took Colin by surprise. He really was quite shocked because what he was writing, what he'd written down, was about precedent on one thing. And I think we as a parish council need to be far more assertive in our comments about applications now, far more assertive. It came over as, what can I say?
Well, it
There
wasn't
was a
strong,
professional
yes.
side and there was people who didn't quite know what to say properly. And that's what I felt. Does that
But
make
then again,
sense?
I mean, you have to recognise, I think,
And we don't know.
and I hope the committee, the planning committee, would recognise that anybody from a parish council, whether it's us or anybody else, is not an expert.
Exactly.
No, this is it. And we
Peter.
are up against
Peter.
experts, of course. And
Peter.
that's obviously was
Came
very
over.
evident.
Oh, very
there.
evident.
I mean, obviously it was planning committee and so forth and so on, but I think as a parish council, it can be quite difficult and
Yeah.
to really get just the right theme of it, or
Yeah.
whatever you call it.
And that's what they do.
Yes.
That's what they do all the time, isn't it?
Peter,
As you say, there's been a lot of activity along that lane. Has it been decided, or does anyone know as to who owns the lane?
Yes.
Can you tell me?
I think it's the Mannings. I think so,
The big
because they
house.
said that, sorry, isn't
It's
it?
the one down from there, it's 111
Oh, sorry.
Weavers.
I can't-
Owned it.
So they've allowed people to,
At the moment, there is, I mean, in terms of planning, you don't take into account who owns it. It's up to, so for example, if
so if somebody built a house down the lane and they wanted to shut it off because they owned it, they could do that.
yes,
I
that's the
don't think that they want to do that because I've heard that they want to knock their house down and build a little estate there.
This is the one opposite the village hall.
Yeah.
With a funny
Yeah.
fence.
well, it's just, I was just conscious that going forward, I think recognising Cynthia's point, Bella's point and Bob's point, we need to put a fairly strong written case,
Yeah.
but obviously it has to be a précis, unfortunately, rather than a chapter and verse. It's got to be a simple 1 or 2, 3 line. But rather than just say we reject on the grounds of, I think we need to have some explanation that would be beneficial going forward. And if we have people that are prepared to go to these meetings to make a more fulsome presentation, do you get many from other parishes, Bob?
Yeah, we get a number. I mean, there are, it depends. You tend to find that on the more controversial ones, then parishes will come along. When they feel strongly, they make the effort to attend, and that's where it does make a difference to members who are on the committee, because if the parish have taken the effort to actually come down and address you and have picked up the points, then you do take them on board more than if it's just purely written. It has that extra impact, but it's a question to some extent of picking your fights.
Yeah.
If you've got things that you feel particularly strongly about and have got good reasons for fighting that corner, then go for it, and you will get a response. But equally, as I say, if you go in with something where you haven't really got the ammunition, it's more difficult. Because again, as was mentioned, the whole thing about precedent, we were trying to argue to some extent, if that happened, it might set a precedent for the future. The applicant, who also attended and spoke, pointed out that there were other developments within the village that had already happened, and that perhaps if there was a precedent, it had already been set. So the officer then stepped in and said, well, there's not a precedent on either side, you have to assess each application on its own merits.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's working out for each application what you think.
Thank you for that clarification. I think it's beneficial going forward.
On that question of planning, there is a planning training evening coming up on the 12th or possibly the 18th of October. If a couple of members would find it beneficial to go to planning training,
I won't be here.
you'll be in
Australia.
down under.
Australia.
Just to mention that one particular thing that will be coming up this year is, as you know, there's a new local plan that's now been sent to the inspector for him to look at for the whole of Sedgemoor, for the local plan to happen. Where there are policies within that local plan that have not been challenged, those are starting to gain what they call weight and can be taken into account even though the whole local plan isn't in place. And part of the training this year will be to explain to parishes which of those policies are now starting to take effect. So, for example, one that could affect us is that where you have a village development boundary and you have land next to it. In the past, you've not been able to build outside the boundary unless it was affordable housing or a P4 site or something like that. The government is encouraging people to do their own self-builds, and so one thing is now coming in the new local plan is to allow people to do a self-build adjacent to the development boundary, so technically outside it. So that may well start to bring applications forward in places like Brent Knoll, and that policy, as far as I'm aware, has not been challenged. Therefore, if an application came in tomorrow, the officers will be starting to look at the new local plan policies rather than just the old ones. So that's one of the reasons why it would be particularly important to have a couple of members going this year so they can pick up on what those sort of things are.
Is that in place though? The government actually, it's all passed. I know they do, there was an article in one of the magazines that I've come round in the parish reading, and there was an article about up in north of England where they'd done that.
It's certainly been something government have been encouraging people, and as I say, it's being brought in the new local plan.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it'd be quite useful to know if anybody's interested, because obviously what tends to happen is that very often when I get a confirmed date, then I email it out, and if I don't get any replies, I can just assume that nobody wants to go, and then I have to give a reply back to the planning team to let them know who's coming. And sometimes it's very difficult, because if I've actually sent the dates out and I haven't had any replies, can I take that there isn't any interest in it, or is it just that somebody hasn't picked up on it and decided to go? So
if it goes out, you put on there this.
Well, that's what I'm now doing.
Requires comment.
I'm now putting now on the requires comment, which does help a bit. You know what the urgent ones are.
I'm just conscious that Colin's not here, and he may or may not want
Colin,
to go.
yeah.
Probably available.
I'd probably go if I can.
Yeah. Well, I'll circulate when we get a firm date. I'll send it down.
Thank you. Can we move on then? Footpaths. This is a review of tour
Well,
from members and clerk. This is footpath.
basically, as you probably know, we went round yesterday. Brian, John, Bob, and myself went round various places in the village yesterday. We spent probably a big chunk of time in the village green, but we also went to Wood Lane and different parts of the village, and really just to ascertain what issues were still kind of ongoing and running, as it were. So I don't know if you've got any comments. I sent a sheet out today telling you what we'd covered yesterday, and were there any other points within that list which we didn't cover? What do you think are still?
We didn't really cover footpaths, did we?
We didn't really cover footpaths, to be honest. No, mostly highways and village green.
So, with respect to footpaths, Peter, have you had anything from anybody?
I've still got a gate in my backyard that I'm eager to get rid of.
This is the one that East Brent are denying any...
No, I got rid of that one.
Oh, you've got that one.
I sorted that out. This is the one that's going to be fitted in the fence down the Body's Lane. Body's Lane. Right down the bottom where you come off the green track that goes in behind the horses.
Yes.
What is the issue? Just remind me, what's causing the issue? Are we waiting on somebody
We're
to do
waiting for
something?
somebody to give us a quote.
Oakgate, is it?
No, Wicket.
Is Richard Cadogan, is that his area?
Yeah, I've showed him it, but we've had that.
We've had no quote, no. So we need to go back to Richard and say...
Or at somebody else, anybody.
Yeah, well, he's done all the others, hasn't he, really? So
He had a look at it and he immediately said he didn't like the look of it because it's all roots.
Is that bit where all the bushes are, the Johnson?
Yeah.
By the style, though, is
The
it?
gravel way.
I see.
Yes, it is a bit different.
any suggestions who else might want to quote on that sort of job?
Ian Durst.
Ian does?
Ian's very busy.
Yeah.
Sorry, who was the other one? Somebody else say something?
Well, we tried the people that we used to use up at, what Welcome is it? Carlsbury. Can't think of their names.
I mean, Ian Walker's another one, but I'm not sure that's his area as much, really.
No, he's doing some, well, he's going to do some work for me, but Ian's so busy at the moment.
Dave, have you got anybody you think might be suitable?
Ian Durston is probably the other one.
Oh no, sorry.
Does he do that?
Yeah, it's done them before.
Yeah, so let's ask Ian, we ask Ian and Richard then and see
Yeah.
what comes of
I'm
there.
going to be mindy. Richard was a bit funny about us not paying him, wasn't he? So he may have.
He wasn't waiting very long though, to be honest. I mean, that's why
No, I know.
we paid him sooner rather than let it run to this meeting. That was the reason. It was only a couple of weeks. I think he got a bit excited about that, to be honest with you. It was really only 2 weeks after the invoice, after I received the invoice.
Well, when I sent him the cheque, which I countersigned, I said that we were sorry that he was aggrieved.
Yeah.
So nothing else on footpaths that we know of?
Does the footpath which goes over the railway line, is that included in this kind of thing? Right. Well, I was walking across towards the crossing, and there was a party of children with parents. There must have been about 12 children. Now, they went on that crossing, and I held my breath because A, they didn't hurry. There are no signs to say, you know, they're just saying beware trains. But they got to the other side, and we discussed that particular style before. But they couldn't get through quickly because it isn't really a style. It's just you have to get in between the fence. Actually, there isn't really a style. Well, honestly, it took me ages to get through. There is a bit of a barrier to stop me getting on the line, but it frightened me to death because they did get through, but that's dangerous. And I think that side particularly, the other side's not so bad. You can get over it and get onto it to cross over, but when you get up to go down, there isn't any. It's very narrow, and the little children have to either get through between the two rails
Really
or over the top, and there's a great drop like this.
Yes, there is.
And little children can't get through quickly.
How
It's
responsible,
dangerous.
if any, are British Rail?
Well, the thing is that recently
Really
it's been
dangerous.
upgraded and it's inviting people to cross there now. It's really superb, the crossing, but
But
either side is
it's
you
not.
haven't even got to step over the rails now. They've built up a walkway with the rails passing
Well,
through it.
that's much
Right.
better.
But
But
that
surely
is
British-
ideal, but
surely
it's getting
British
through
Rail-
onto the railway
Well,
track.
it's dangerous. That's all I'm saying to you. I
Well,
mean,
I would
if
have
the
thought
train
British
had
Rail
come
have a
along there,
responsibility,
Well, Network
or
Rail
Network
was,
Rail have a responsibility where you've got public access across the tracks.
We don't have
It
any,
wants
there isn't
improving.
a stop, look and listen sign, is there?
if you have all those signs, but it's actually
Yeah, but
getting,
that would be included as part of that process.
yes,
I would have
yes,
thought that you
it's
have.
actually that getting through and getting good quickly.
If you go
easily,
from
and
Western
they couldn't.
Supermare to Highbridge, I cannot think of any other crossing that has steps. I think all the others have got kissing gates.
Yes, they have. The one further up has got it.
One down at Home Farm, the one down
But
behind
it is dangerous.
Highbridge,
It's
one
really
down-
dangerous.
Can we?
when I wrote the last time, because I had a response from Network Rail about a year or so ago on this one, and they wrote back to me, if you recall, and said, actually, we don't regard this as a priority, because what we were getting permission for is to put something more permanent, as a better structure either side.
Well,
And they wrote back because I said we would like permission, and they at that stage wouldn't give us permission. They said that as far as we're concerned, we're quite happy with it.
Well,
Well,
it's not right.
we need to go back to them again, I guess, and say, look, we've seen an incident this summer where it could have been quite dangerous.
It
So,
could be. It's very dangerous.
how old were the children, Cynthia?
I suppose
Preschool,
they were probably up from
pre-secondary.
about 6 until...
Some primary school.
Primary school.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
They were with adults,
Yeah, but
but
that's not the point.
they couldn't get through quickly enough.
It doesn't really matter how.
I think we
I
could
just
use, we
thought-
could cite that as an example, that's all.
It's when you've got dogs as well.
I'll have
Well,
another
they didn't
go.
have any dogs.
I know, but
I
if you
had
go
dogs.
through with a dog, you have to put the leads down underneath and put your hand through them.
Yeah, you do.
Time over.
It's not
Because
good.
you don't let the dogs off the leads.
They can't.
And of course, the biggest thing of all is when you write to Network Rail. I've got an email on there when I wrote to them, and it says, "We will respond to your email in not less than 48 days."
Oh.
Well, of course, then what happens is you don't get a response within 48 days, of course, so you then send another one, and then you get an automated reply that comes back and says, "Thank you for your correspondence. We will reply within 48 days." So you never actually get to speak to anybody, and this is the problem. But I'll endeavour to try and raise that same person that wrote to me last time and see if I can get hold of her.
It might be an idea for someone to take a photograph of
Could be.
that. Because,
That'd be a good idea.
because they don't know what we're talking about. I mean, you know, the people up in
If
offices.
somebody's got a camera and they just want to click a couple of photographs and attach them
Yeah.
over to me.
It's not just for children getting over,
It's
it's
not-
older
it's
people
older
like
people.
myself. I went over there the other week and it's quite a drop to get into the field, you know.
Perhaps we ought to get it in
I mean, the parents are
But
very
mostly
responsible,
news.
but it was the fact they couldn't get them
a
through.
bit of bad publicity for Network Way.
Anyway.
Right, highway reports. Anything that you need to say prior to the report of the, whatever they call
Well,
it?
there were two issues came up yesterday, Malcolm. One was the Manor Ride pothole, which is still there. One on the left-hand side, you come down Manor Ride, turn left, and just in the middle of the road there's a pothole. And there's also one near Ivyclad Hall, which again may or may not meet the requirements from the county, but they're both quite bad ones.
Would it be appropriate to talk about that tanker, sewage tanker?
Could be, yeah.
There was one parked opposite the Methodist Chapel,
Been
overnight, the wrong way round, no lights, and it's not the first time.
Oh, what sort of tanker was it?
Sewage tanker.
Arctic lorry, they just
It's been there before.
Yeah.
That's why they do
Not
some
the first
alterations
time.
on the Wessex
And
Water.
it was brought to my attention by a member of the public, so I followed it up and passed the details on to Owen, who then contacted the people, didn't you?
Yeah, I managed to find the owners in the end, and it's about a third-hand owner. The original tanker that was sold to a Bridgewater company was then sold on again, so of course it was quite hard to track down the owner, but we did manage to find out the owner, and the owner rang me actually and said what was the problem, and I said, well, the problem is it's parked in a very, very difficult position in the village, and frankly, you know, we don't want to escalate it to the police. I said, but we will do unless you get it moved. But it was moved the following morning. Apparently.
It was, yeah.
So, you know, that's the sort of thing that will happen with vehicles that get transferred ownerships. You know,
So it's
Watch this space.
nothing
So
to do with
coming out
Wessex
of-
Water.
no,
We don't
I
know.
don't think it was. No.
So coming out of yesterday's trip, the only one that came to I saw was Wick Lane, I think you said,
Yeah, well, yeah.
which I hope the county are aware of, because the sides are going.
And they've red marked it in places, haven't they?
Well, Wick Lane and Burton Road going all the way to East Brent, there's a plethora of red marks. What that means, I don't know, because I'm not sure whether it's red or pink or orange, or the significance of said colours.
Well, shall I ask a question? What signifies our colours? Is that a good starting point? Signify
I
our
would hope if
colours.
they've marked it, they're actually going to do something. And I guess it's where, and they're about a metre in from the curb edge, or the road edge, and that's where the longitudinal cracks are, and the substance has occurred or is occurring, and I hope they're going to repair it. Okay.
And the other thing, of course, was the finger posts, which obviously we identified 3 yesterday. One which has been destroyed completely at the other end of Wick Lane. There was no sign there at all. And then there's 2 others that need painting. One this end of Wick Lane and one coming into Brent Street, just on the corner of Brent Street.
So the question we have to Councillor,
It's West Road.
West Road. West
are
Road.
we allowed to do it? Is it a county issue?
To be honest, it's an issue that the county have delegated to parishes, and there was some correspondence that came out to the parish council a little while ago about whether or not we could do it. There are apparently, it's a bit like with the SID, then you need to make sure that people are safe to be working on the highway. Exactly. I understand we actually raised this at the scrutiny committee at county this week because a number of parishes are frustrated that they want to do something but are fed up when they get a 40-page document from county telling them what they can and can't do. So the highways department did say they would go away and try and come up with a much more workable way of working with the parishes. One of the parish councils I was with the other night were actually looking at potentially not only repainting theirs, they've got finger posts that they're actually getting recast, which are running into thousands of pounds, I think is obviously something up to them, but I'm surprised they're prepared to pay that amount.
Do they have to be metal? Could we replace them in plastic, for example?
If you notice with a number of the fender posts we've got, they are mixed. There are some of the original cast signs. There are other bits that have been added in wood at later stages. But obviously what county was looking for was really for just the maintenance of them, so it's not replacements they're looking for, it was just repainting as much as anything.
Because I was conscious, like John organised the signs of the village. They are more durable, potentially, if we had some plastic fingerboards. And perhaps a cheaper option.
I think they need to check with them, because I think they are part of the reason for having them refurbished is because a lot of them are sort of heritage signs.
I don't think plastic would
And it's not difficult, you just paint them all white and then go over them with a black roller, because they're all the figures are raised.
Right.
The only problem we have got is the one at the end of Wick Lane, which has been completely destroyed. I mean, they've left the bottom half of it, but the whole white piece with the finger pointing areas have just disappeared. So I have reported that to county today and asked them to investigate whether they can either locate it or what we're going to do about it.
Is that the contractor doing the solar?
It's been melted down.
To be honest, it was there within only a week or so ago, because I came back that way into the village and it was still there then. So within the last 2 weeks,
Was it sort of falling over?
it was at a slight angle, but the top was definitely there. And as you saw yesterday, it's just the grey bases.
Light load? Tractor?
Not bad.
Sorry.
There's also a sign that needs replacing, Hill Lane sign at the top end of Church Lane, which obviously that's a Sedgemoor one because that's a street name. So we'll get that dealt with ASAP.
On that front, I've also reported the missing Brent Street sign that was down by Westcroft. So hopefully they're working on getting that replaced.
The other thing is, I just noticed that Woodlands Hotel have still got signs up around the village, and it no longer operates as such. Who's responsible for that? Presumably Sedgemoor.
Different agency and brand signs.
Yeah, they were actually paid for by Woodlands, had to contribute to their costs. So I think they may belong to them. They had to get them approved through highways. But I'll have a word to Woodlands and see if they would like to keep them themselves or whether they would.
It would be worthwhile. And I guess the same principle applies to a bus stop.
Well, have we got any, have we?
Yes,
Still got
we've got a bus stop.
And they've waited for the kids to go back to school before they dismantled the pumping station.
Can we receive a report from Bella on the village green, and then we can then consider the
options written
add-ons that went on as well?
I'll put it on the screen while you're doing it. I'll put it on the screen.
Can I just interrupt you there? So mine is July currently for you.
Oh yes. Do you want to do yours first?
We haven't met since then.
This is true.
Would I tell a lie?
I wouldn't know, but trust you implicitly.
I went twice. The grass is in good order after recent rain. Brambles on the left by the path need to be cut, and that's already been done. And back those behind by the slide, I think that's been done too. On the roundabout, base one pad on the corner is lifting up. We noticed that yesterday. Could be a trip hazard. Birds seem to be using the seesaw as a toilet. You can't help that. The base under the main climbing frame is dirty, and that was mentioned yesterday. Area by the cycle racks and behind the toilets needs weeding, which we also mentioned. Small area of pebble dash has flaked away on the outside wall of the toilet.
Yes, it has.
Dead branch from the apple tree is overhanging the car park. I think that's gone now, isn't it? And the car park markings could benefit from repainting, which in fact I mentioned yesterday to the group. And then at the beginning of August, the wooden post at the village green entrance needs replacing, which we mentioned. The horizontal piece of the stile at the far end of green is rotten. That's at the church end.
I question whether we need that.
Well, yeah, right.
And I would suggest, because I think I raised it about 2 years ago, why do we have it? because every time I've looked at it, you climb over the stile, and if it's young children particularly, and it's just a field of brambles,
Yeah.
stinging nettles, and that's just an accident waiting to happen. Bella, we're now going to August.
Virtually the same actually. So weeds around edge of car park and the white lines will need repainting soon, also the yellow line. The grass needed cutting when I went to the green, brambles and cutting back, front bar of bench needs screwing back, that was when I looked there. Under seesaw, long grass through rubber matting was a bit dangerous, and grass at back of mugger very long, which now been cut. Weeds by netting around mugger. Toilets, no hand wash gel in ladies, and I wasn't sure if we provided that or the Sedgemoor provided that. Gents could do with a coat of paint on walls, looks dirty. Weeds very bad around toilets. Recycling notice by car park could be removed. Yes. It's a little notice at the top. And said to report when they went again, and the grass has been cut. So, similar.
The list that we drew up, obviously I missed a couple of things missed off there because I didn't put on this list, I didn't put the car park site, relining on there. Apart from that, most of these items are, well, say a lot of them are really in need of a decision on who's going to do them, because Jason is not really into doing a lot of these things. We did decide yesterday, I think we needed somebody to undertake some of these smaller tasks. Particularly things like the trip hazards on the side of the play areas, that needs dealing with. There's that little piece of wood in front of it on the bench which needs sorting out. All the spray work that's needed around there's a lot of stuff in there, weeding needs doing. There's some hole filling needed near the bench. The benches need wood staining, but of course we've got Andy Selway who can do that.
I thought he did do a couple.
He did do a couple, I think. There's another one that now.
Both of those two need doing that.
And there's also, that was the thing Bob you raised, that consideration of the crown lifting of the acacia tree there, whether that is felt to be something that needs doing. There's also needs to have we need to have a new sign made with a contact number on, which is obviously my number.
Well, I have just taken a photograph of it today, so I've got it in blue and white, and I know the contact number, so if we decide we want it replaced, I can get Arian signs who've worked for us before to do it.
Get a price.
But I just get on with it and get a price.
Well, get a price.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Pressure washing, obviously Dirt Driver already agreed to do it. They were leaving it until September because they said there's not much point doing it before summer holidays. So I can now authorise them to go ahead. We already authorised it actually to go ahead and get on with the job of doing the pressure washing. So it's a question really of deciding on or finding
I
something.
think there was a couple of things on the annual inspection report that we had, which was pretty thorough this time, by comparison to any that we've had previously, I would suggest. And that was mentioning the bolts sticking out, so we would need some of these bolts cutting back or trimming back or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Andy can do that or he's just a painter.
He's just a painter, to be honest.
But ideally they should be cut back before he revisits.
When we had the edging replaced on the play areas about 5 or 6 years ago with the wooden edging, Coast did that. Dave Welland from Burnham did that. He did a very good job when he did it originally. Now whether he's the chap we need to get some quotes for doing all these bits and pieces. Matter for you really. I mean, unless there's anybody else who you can think of would be suitable.
By the sound of it, the majority of that sort of stuff he would be able to do.
I should think Dave would do most of that. Yeah. Except the crown lift, he wouldn't do that, of course. That would be a tree surgeon.
Well, that would get Dave in the village.
Decided to do that. Could decide to do it.
Possibly.
But the rest of it, probably, was the replacing of that post. As you look at the village green, on the right hand side, the post is gone there. Right. As you walk into the gate, the post is flapping around that ribbon there. So that needs replacing, and it all needs wood staining on the front there as well. It's all very tired looking.
Well, Andy can do wood staining.
Yeah.
The fence that we were going to have done with chain link, is that
That's Ian Durson's going to come back with a quote on that for us. I'm still waiting for a quote from him.
He could put the wooden post in at the same time.
Yeah, he could do that. He could do that bit.
So you'd be perhaps ask him,
Yeah,
chase his quote and ask him to
to do that other bit.
What were you talking about, the fence behind the toilet?
Yeah.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
The fact that back in January, February, I was asked to show Richard Cadogan the fence we wanted, also the fence at behind Northfield, what's the East Ride,
Oh, yeah.
the big gate down at the side of the farm, and also the wires, the string wire on the far side of the green and the string wire on this side of the green. He came back with a quote for this fence here of £900. He said he could do the string wire on that side, the fence at East Ride, and the gate down at the side of the farm. We decided, we voted on it and decided that we needed another quote because we felt the 900 needed one to stand against it, so that it was fair. We decided that he'd take on all the other jobs. He couldn't do the gate because it wasn't in our possession at that time. So we waited until he came. I kept asking about the fact this 900, had we got a quote? You said that you had another quote for the fence down this side of £3,000, which the council didn't vote on at all, but we got that. For 2 or 3 meetings we had quotes coming in that weren't for this fence. Ultimately we got a quote for a fence the same as it is there now. Now what really upset me was the fact that the clerk wrote to me and said that he and Bob were going to have a look at it. Now I don't know why they needed to have a look at it, because it was black and white. We needed a comparative quote against £900.
I think the quote that we had from Ian Durston originally was slightly off the mark, because what he was doing is he was replacing the existing fence that was there, but we wanted a taller
Why
one.
was he doing it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it was probably just a communication problem. He just went and thought, oh, we just want to replace the one
What
that's there.
annoyed me was the fact that you and Bob were going to have a look at it.
Well, I wanted to clarify with Bob exactly what we were replacing. It was a lower one, it was a higher one. And simply we did the whole...
Oh, it's there in black and white, Owen. You had the letter from Ian Cadogan that we voted this to get another quote against it. I don't see what the problem was.
Bob, the reason that I was involved with it was because we had an email that came round to us with the new quote that came through, and there was a bit of discussion about how tall the fence was, because it was 1.2 metres.
1.7, I think.
No, it was short,
Was it?
because I then wrote back to Owen and said, I didn't think we were asking for a replacement as to what was there at the moment. We were asking for something that was going to match the height of the taller fence.
Exactly.
So what he quoted us was the wrong thing, and that's why I only met up with Owen to say, look,
Confused.
that's what we're
Yeah,
supposed
but
to be
what I
matching, not
had is
matching
what
what's
I
there.
need to quote for that. I mean, who gave you information that that's what you wanted?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think we just need to clarify now what exactly we want to do there. If we want to do the higher fence, and we're happy with Richard's quote, let's go with Richard's quote,
I'm
because...
not interested as to whether we have Richard or anybody else. What I'm saying is the council voted that we should have another quote for that because we felt that £900 was a lot of money.
And we haven't had another quote from Richard.
No,
What
we've
Richard...
been through, had other quotes for things that we didn't ask for.
Yeah, I know, we have, yes, because there was a bit of a communication problem, because I was talking about the restraining of the wire down the right-hand side.
Yeah.
I got completely wrong end of the stick of what you were asking the quote for. So when Ian Durston came along, and Ian Morgan came along as well, they quoted for that bigger job down the right-hand side. I said to Ian, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a quote for the fence behind the actual toilet block.
But that's not what you told me when I queried it. You said, when I said the fact that now that the meetings are online, that it was unfair to ask somebody else to quote for it against a quote that we'd already received, and you said it's for something totally different. You didn't say that at that time. It's not what we asked for. You accepted the fact that we were receiving quotes for things you believed that was needed.
Well, there's obviously been a complete communication breakdown here, and I think we'll just clarify now what it is we actually want to do and who we want to accept the quotes from. I mean, Ian hasn't quoted on it anyway, so we haven't got a quote from Ian on it. He hasn't quoted for the taller
No, I
end.
know he hasn't.
So we can forget Ian from
Yeah.
that point of view. So if we've got a quote from Heritage that we're happy with, We haven't got a quote from Ian anyway, so we're no further forward on that one anyway.
But this has been going on since February.
So, I mean, well, let the council decide. I mean, what do you want to do? Do you
Well,
want to
as a
take
point
it
of
to
principle, it's in excess of
it's going to be, well, I forgot, we'll have
£500, maybe more now.
No, what I'm saying is we have in our procedural documentation, anything that's going to cost over £500, we are required to get more than one quotation.
Right,
Three.
but
And
that's
that was the issue.
yeah, but that's not happened.
And that hasn't
It's
happened.
not happening. So is it your wish then that we pursue Ian Durston for the other quote, so we can then put that quote alongside the one we've already got from Heritage, or are you happy to take the Heritage one that you claim we voted on last
No,
time?
I'm not happy at all. I'm happy that we should still carry on with what we said we were going to do in
Do it.
March.
That's fine.
Yeah, can we please do
I
that?
mean, if
I
otherwise,
think we need to go, I think.
And as in respect of the long fence on this side, to replace that, I think we decided,
we didn't even have a vote on
well, we didn't have a vote, but we did discuss it, Peter,
We didn't need to do it.
and we thought it
We
was
need to do it.
too much money to do it, and really, was there a justification
We
to
don't know
do
why
it?
we even went out and asked for quotes.
Well,
But the point is, do we need to do it going forward?
Well, I think we ought to do one thing at a time.
No.
Well, at the right, we're talking about the right-hand side of the green. I think by looking at it, the three of us yesterday, I think it's quite clear. The fence there has now really grown into the hedge, and far enough, we're talking about fences around my field, and David's been looking at it, and we're going to replace all the fencing, but with the hedge coming through the fence, and it's all right. It's much easier, just go down with the hedge cutter and clear it up. So I don't think that on the right-hand side of the green, I don't think needs to be done.
I don't,
So,
because
so just for the benefit of avoiding any confusion, what is it we're actually now asking to do with this fence behind the
Fence
toilet?
behind
That's
the
not what
toilet.
we're asking to do, what we should have done.
Yes, okay, so okay, let's clarify, Peter. If we should,
So we need
are we-
a quote for, as it says here, remove the existing low and badly damaged chain link fence and install a run of 8-foot high chain link to match existing fence. This will require the breaking out of the old concrete post and the subsequent disposal, and installing 2 new end posts, 2 intermediate posts, and a run of 8-foot high chain link fencing. All posts will be concreted in position, and new chain link will match existing.
So we need to go back to Richard now, if the council's happy, and say, yes, we want to go ahead with that.
We need another
we
quote.
need another
yes.
quote.
Another like for like, well, Ian's clearly not going to give us a quote, because he's been asked to do it about 7 weeks ago, and
Right.
hasn't done so. So is there a suggestion of somebody else that we could actually ask to give us an alternative quote? Is that an Ian Morgan job?
Ask him.
You could ask him, but I don't. As a point of principle, and I would look for somebody to comment, please. If we're faced with a situation where we cannot get 3 quotations, can we just go ahead with one on the basis of common sense?
Well, to be fair, we haven't really tried, have
No,
we?
we have tried to get this one from
We're
Ian.
trying to get into this. The trouble is with all these contractors, I mean, let's face it, they're all pretty much the same. A lot of them now don't seem to be that interested in quoting for these jobs. The number of people we've asked to do things and they never come back with quotes. I mean, Ian Durston has taken the best part now 2 months to come back now with an alternative quote. It's the one he originally gave for the shorter fencing, for the taller fencing. Okay, that's taken nearly 2 months to get to that stage. So I would say to you, well, okay, is that acceptable? You know, to wait that length of time for a quote. And if that isn't, then we need to find somebody else who is prepared to give us a
Well, I
quote.
think the thing is, we are where we are. We've got 2 possible people, Ian Durston and the other chap. We need to get another quote. Let's bang a letter to them to ask them for quotes. And if we come to the next meeting and it isn't there, we've done our best, and then we have to make a decision.
And then go with the quotes we have got, the ones we've got already on paper.
Oh, did you want to say something?
I'm happy to second what John's just said.
Yeah. So that is an acceptable way forward
Okay,
under our
all right.
procedure. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I apologise for any confusion, because it clearly has been a very confusing situation. It's all along.
Well, it just niggled a nerve end with me when I was asked to do it, and then you said that you were going to look at the bulb. So
Somebody mentioned, just man, your thing has died.
So I don't
The person you said at Burnham?
yeah, Dave Welland. He's a sort of good, odd job sort of gardener
He
type.
may do it.
Sorry?
He may do it.
He may do it.
No, I was just thinking whether we gave him that list.
Don't think he'd
of
do that.
things to do.
Don't think he'd quote for that sort of job. I don't think he would. He may do. I don't know.
It's more to do all the bits and pieces out there in terms of all the trip hazards on the grass and that sort of thing, and fill it in. That
Are you happy that we get Dave to have a look at that job and to give a quotation for that? All the bits and pieces on the green?
On ground maintenance, apart from the fact that we need to do returfing, etc., there is the spraying which needs to be done. Are we going to ask Jason to do it? Is he going to do it? Because that needs to be done, it needs to be done now. And it's not a particularly onerous task.
Or shall I just go and do it?
I mean, David can do it, he'll do it in an hour.
If you do it, are you going to do it gratis?
Yeah, I'll do it for nothing.
Be sure.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about it in a year's time otherwise.
Well, if you do it for a fee, then there's issues.
No, I'll do it for nothing.
For sure.
I'm fed up with hearing about it.
So we don't.
So don't worry about the spraying, that'll be done.
Okay, all right.
And use something that's child friendly.
Yeah, I'll do it when there's school time, in school time, I think.
Thank you.
And then it'll be dry by the time they come out of school.
Very good. Thank you, David. That's
That's
good.
good.
Can I mention something else? A parishioner asked me what the two posts were doing as you come from the car park through onto the bit in front of the toilets. There's the old fence is gone now, but there's two concrete posts stuck up. And she wondered as to whether we could get rid of those. It's just the old gateway.
Leapfrog.
Sorry?
Play leapfrog over it.
Well, the thing is, you can go either side of the post. They don't sort of.
Non-functional posts.
That's right. When you can get your boots inside the concrete, there's a very big iron rod.
Yeah.
It'll be the trouble.
And I'm wondering as to whether if you're going to have people look at the rest of the.
Non-functional post to be removed.
Yeah.
Mm.
If he comes in a
Well,
big bulldozer.
If you do end up removing them, obviously they need to make good that the ground is, if you're walking over there and it's not even, then we're in more trouble than if it's just there. But if it can be made good, that's fine.
Can the recycling sign be taken down? Is it ours or is it Sept?
I've got noted that actually.
It's
Is
here.
it the parish halls?
Yeah, I think it
No,
just needs
it's-
unscrewing.
It's the parish councils.
Yeah. So